All right, welcome. It is episode number 10, and I am with Curt Sassak today, and he's going to tell you what he does. Curt, take it away.
I'm a career and personal development coach, and I focus on established professionals who have had success, but find themselves questioning it, right? Like you're at the top of the mountain wondering, is this it? What's next? I have no more mountains to climb because that's what happened to me.
Okay, that's great. We're gonna dig into that heavily because that's something that I've experienced personally. But before we do that, I just wanted to say that Curt the other day had sent me a video of him like ripping up, or I should say, tearing up the fretboard with a Megadeth riff. I can't even talk. So in honor of that, I know this is sacrilegious probably in some circles, but I had to put something metal on. I don't have a Megadeth shirt anymore. I think that thing, I wore
I don't
that
have
thing.
any concert shirts. I have about 20 of these.
Yep, that's kind of where I'm getting these days too. But I did get this one a couple of years ago, and Metallica. Hey, same, part of the big four, right? So
It's
just
all
wanted to wear,
music.
just wanted to wear that in honor of it. So other than that, before we jump into it, I just want to remind everybody that I need you to subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of talk, because this is where we're going to talk to Gen Xers in their 40s and their 50s who've reinvented their lives and bet on themselves. And I interview these people because I want to show everybody out there what is possible, right? Because a lot of times we're not thinking like, oh my God, I'm doomed, I'm screwed, I gotta wait till I'm 65. And it's like, no, that's all bullshit. And that's why I bring these people onto this podcast, because I want you guys to believe that it's not over. You've got plenty of runway left. And so yeah, if you like those kind of talks, make sure that you subscribe, like, leave something in the comments. Let us know what you're thinking. And oh yeah, we're on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts now, so check that out. So anyway, let's start from the top, Curt. What were you doing, in your teens, your 20s? What is it that you thought you wanted to do or were working on back in the early days?
Oh, I knew I wanted to be a chef from about 11 years old. I just
Oh,
always knew. So
perfect.
while other kids in high school on career day were trying to figure out what they wanted to do, I just always knew. So my first job was actually Pizza Hut. That doesn't really count, but that was my first experience in anything food related. And yeah. So I just always knew I was lucky and always, and this will lead to when I talk about the reinvention, I always knew what I wanted. I always had, the plan and I was knocking out the goal. So again, compared to others, mine, it just fell into place.
That is interesting. I was talking um last week with Dr. Ebony Truss, and we were kind of talking about, a lot of people don't know what they want to do in the early, or they have inklings of it, but they kind of suppress it because they like listen to other people saying like, oh, that's not possible, or how are you going to make money doing that? Like that kind of, you kind of fall into this trap of society telling you what to do rather than like following what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And that is, what you saying that like, oh, I knew right away I wanted to be a chef. That's awesome. I think I knew what I wanted to be right away. I just ignored it to some extent because it's like, for all those reasons. We don't have to go into that. If you want to go into that, I did that on the last episode number 9. So what was it that, you're a chef, you're out there kicking ass, taking names, making food, and one day you wake up and what are you thinking? Like, what caused you to start thinking that you needed to change?
When I went through it, I didn't even understand it. Right. So, and that was a hard thing because when you reach that inflection point 15, 20 years after you start your career, you know, most people don't plan that. Right. And then you're like, shit, the colleges are great at preparing you for the skills for your career, but not for 15, 20 or more years down the road. Like, shit, I don't know what I want to do next. This wasn't part of the fucking plan. You feel like the universe pulled the rug out from under you. And I always knew what I wanted to do. Right? High achievers, we like being in control, not necessarily in a control freak kind of way, but we like knowing our steps. And so everything was going according to plan. By age 39, I lived and worked in 7 countries and some of the top 5-star hotels and resorts around the world. So, I mean, I felt like the man with the plan. I was on top of the world. But then I'd say right around 35 is when I started losing passion for my job. But I thought it was, because at that time I had been in that posting for about 2.5 years. So that, and usually most people, after that, in the same hotel, same position, it's time to move on. So I thought it was a job. So I got transferred to another property. So I went from India to Dubai, and beautiful hotel, the Park Hyatt Dubai. And after the honeymoon period of that new job wore off, I was unhappy again. Like, okay, must be the job. Change jobs. Then I moved to Egypt. After a couple months, the honeymoon period wore off. Was unhappy again. Up, change jobs. So long story short, that one I changed jobs about 5 or 6 times in about 4 years, I think. And it took until that last time to realize, oh shit, maybe the problem is me. But see, my career was my identity, and I was married to that life plan, right? So the thought of changing careers was, even when I saw the signs, was like, nah. It's kind of like that person you tell your friend, like, dude, your girlfriend's cheating on you. Nah, she would never do that. I saw her banging him in the back seat. Nah, she would never do that, right?
Yep. Great analogy.
And like, in other words, you can have all the evidence and you still, like I did, ignore it, because I was committed to that life plan. I was basically married to it. And the thing that gives people so much trouble is their ego, right? Because it's hard to admit that, oh, this isn't working, I got to do something else. Then there's the fear, like, shit, this wasn't part of the plan. What am I going to do next? Then there's the sunk cost fallacy. Well, fuck, I invested
Yeah.
27 years in this career. I'm not walking away from this. So to help anybody listening or watching, here are the things I noticed in myself that told me it was time for a change. 1, just Sunday scaries. 2, waking up every day, just was going through the motions of life. 3, irritability. I just get angry sometimes, or you get in disagreements with your significant other and you don't know why. It's over stupid shit. Or the other, was it 4 or 5? What number am I on? Your days off, you just want to do nothing, right? Not motivated to do thing. And I also noticed that it just became a grind going into work, because when I had the passion for my job, I didn't mind working 12, 14, 16 hours a day. But when I lost the passion for it, working just even an hour or just walking into work put me in a bad mood. And then I also noticed that my strengths were no longer strengths. So as a chef, creativity was always a strength. I love writing menus, doing specials and events. And that was a struggle. I couldn't, the strengths weren't strengths. So those were some of the things I noticed looking back that I ignored at the time.
It's interesting. It's like, I would say pretty identical to like the experience I had, other than the fact that I wasn't like just super dug in on like we'll call it a passion type
Oh, I
of
was.
career. But like what you said there about like not liking work, and there was this period of time where like, the thank God it's Friday crowd, like that's the way it was for many years for me. When I was working in say factory type jobs or blue collar type stuff that I did. But then when I moved into like a mechanical drafting role, I was in the office and I was like, well, this is great. I can do this all the time. I love this. I made it. I'm in the office. But eventually that thank God it's Friday thing started creeping in again, right? I mean, you shouldn't care what day it is when you're really liking what you do. And I used to say this a couple of years ago to my friends, because I've been self-employed since like 2013 at this point. And it's like, I've gone to the point where it's like, thank God it's Monday. It
Yeah.
sounds kind of, because it's like, okay, the weekend's over. It's time to get back at it, because you still are kind of within the constraints of, everybody else's schedule, right? Because they have a 5-day week, you get your friends, your family. So sometimes I can't wait to get back to work because I had to take off. So anyway, that was just one point I wanted to make, because there's definitely a psychological thing going on there. The one thing that's interesting about your story that I haven't come across with other people and myself is the fact that you were in, a quote unquote passion career type of a situation, right? Because I think about myself where one of the things I did when I was kind of reinventing myself is I like went hardcore into music. Like I recorded a couple albums. And I'd never done this before until my late 30s, early 40s. I recorded a couple albums. I just started playing live. I put together a band, and within the space of like 5 years, I was like playing regularly. And this is coming from nothing, right? I didn't do any of this in my 20s, even in my teens. But and I thought I had it made for a while, but that just went down really fast. Like I think I associated money with my passion, and it just started to erode at that. And it's kind of interesting hearing your story because you'd been doing it for so long. It's something that you had thought since early in life that like this is what I was born to do. So it's really interesting to me that like now you have to disassociate yourself with it. Are you, well, I don't know if you have to, but like you had to pull yourself away from it. And how do you feel about cooking now? Like in do you still do it like on the side? I mean,
I
you
fucking
have
hate
all
cooking
this
for
knowledge
myself.
or
I hate cooking for myself. I only feed myself so I don't die.
okay.
Um,
Okay.
I mean, and when I would give cooking classes, people, I mean, I don't know of any. I mean, I'm sure there. I know, sure there are. I like cooking for other people, but for myself, no. And when I would give cooking classes, people I'd hear this every time. Oh wow, being a chef, must be great. You're making rack and lamb or I'm like, you kidding? I fucking hate cooking for myself. I want to go buy what do you eat? I go buy a sandwich or takeout, and they just kind of look at me funny. They didn't get it. So I said, I'm going to give you an example. This is what cooking for yourself is like. It's like sex. I can do it by myself and it's fine, right? It does the job, but it's way
Yep.
better when somebody else does it, even if they're mediocre.
Yeah.
That's the way I describe it. Yeah, but cooking for others, yeah. For me, and no, I have no desire to step foot in the kitchen, even though, which is kind of weird because I used to love it, but absolutely no desire whatsoever.
No, that's really interesting. I'm like, it just yeah, I've never really talked to anybody that went that trajectory. Usually it was the other way. Like they found what they really thought that they were meant to do, and then so I don't know, very interesting.
Well,
So
I found actually real quick, I found it's typically one of two things. You either when people hit that inflection point, right? It's either you did what I did, where you followed your passion, had a great career, you got everything you wanted and more, and then the passion just died. Just like in a marriage, if you've ever known a married couple,
yeah.
or maybe they're not married, but think of a couple or have known who were together a long time, great couple, and then they break up. You're like, what happened? Like, well, the love died, right? Or the other way it happens is people follow what they think they're supposed to follow, either because what their family wanted or society, or they follow somebody else's definition of success. Then they get to the top of the mountain, right? They get success. They're like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And I hear so often on calls with clients who've been working, it's usually around 20 years, give or take. And it's like, I know I have more to offer, and I just need more meaning and fulfillment. Because also, right around that time, you start valuing your time more.
One of the things we talked about on the last podcast, is we talked about this thing of where like you're always you're building towards a destination. Like there's this, you know, pie in the sky, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And when you get there, it's like, okay, that's all it was. And
Yeah.
what we were talking about is how like, and I compare it to fitness in a way, like where, you do a diet, you lose your weight, and it's like, okay, great, I lost the weight, I feel great. Now what? Right. Well, you have to continue to do it every day for the rest of your life, like, and it's like, so whatever it is that you want to do or want to pursue, you have to really focus on like, okay, what are the things I like to do every single day? Because it's a practice, right? It's not a destination. I mean, and it sounds kind of like you have the same kind of thinking on that, right? I mean, it's like you want something you're gonna enjoy doing every day, not focus on the outcome, but focus on the day to day, the practice of what it is that you're doing. Would
Yeah,
that
and I
be
the weight loss is a good example because I lost 55 pounds after age 50, now 55. And where I'm going with that is it's not a brag, but I lost the weight and I let my diet start slipping a bit because I'm like, okay, I lost the weight. And then what I did is to not to trick myself, but I realized that once you achieve whatever it is you want, the key is redefine that as your baseline. Okay, I lost 55 pounds. Now that's my baseline. Now where can I go? And you could apply that to career or anything else.
Yeah, no, it's definitely yeah, because otherwise you're just sitting there rehashing the same shit, and then you go back, you lose. And I'm the same way. Like I've been on a kind of a weight loss journey. I haven't lost quite as much as you did, but I've definitely gone and dropped down. And you just over time, you just have to keep practicing. And yes, I slip off the wagon all the time, you know, but I never go off the rails, right? Like, because it's like you once after a while you start to develop these guardrails, right? Like you're like, oh, I'm slipping, and it's like you got to pull it back in. And I'm still in the process of every day for the rest of my life. It's a practice. I'm gonna have to figure that out. And it's the same thing with the career. I'm always trying to. I've got guardrails keep me going, but yet it's always going to be a constant. Like, okay, what do I like to do? What to leave in? What to leave out? Like that kind of thing. And it's very interesting. So, what do you? What are you working on today? Like, what is the big thing? Because I see your videos, and your videos are really good. If you guys are really into, I mean, you're very motivational. You're almost like I don't want to call you Goggins because Goggins is his own
I've
thing,
actually
right?
heard
David
that several
Goggins.
times.
You really?
There's a bit of Goggins to my approach. And I tell people that's just the former chef in me. Just that's the way I talk and anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, that's interesting that people said that because that just came to the top of my mind, like as I was trying to describe how your videos are. I mean, it's very, um, it's just upfront. It's I want to say brash, but that sounds like too. I don't know. That
I
doesn't sound.
I
I
I
don't know.
just I describe it as uh the direct and bluntness of a chef meets some David Goggins, meets a little bit of Bill Burr with the kind of, how comedians roast, meets satire and dark humor.
Yeah, like snarky kind of that would
Yeah.
be like a Bill Burr kind of a.
But I don't roast people because I never want the listener or the viewer of my content to feel like the villain because, but what I roast is more the faulty mindsets, right? Or the behaviors that many of us fall into. But I never roast the person because it's easy to fall. I mean, basically everything I talk about in my content, I've been guilty of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even if I were to roast somebody, I'd be roasting myself.
Yeah, that's one thing. I'm like super. I don't know what the word is. I'm like afraid of being a hypocrite. I kind of can relate to that because I hate telling people something that I'm not willing to do myself or that I'm guilty of all the time. So tell us about like some of your clients. Tell us about your business, like because you also guide people like on in their transition from doing something they're doing now, they're unhappy, and there's like this destination, there's this transformation that you kind of help them with. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
So people typically come to me for the following reasons. One, they just feel stuck and they're trying to figure out what's next. They hit that inflection point like I did, and they're like, wow, shit, this wasn't part of the fucking plan. That's one. Two, they want to make a career change. Three, they want to move up in their career. Or four, they're looking for a job and realize the job market's changed. It's much more difficult because whether you're making a career change or want to move up in your career or need a job or you're stuck, the basic approach is the same, right? There's a framework. And me having been a chef, I tell people the way I work it, think of following a recipe. It's quite simple. Okay. And I'll get more into that in a minute. But the but those are the main reasons that people come to me for. Okay. And they all involve a transition at the end of the day.
Yep.
The mistake many people make when making transitions is they either don't have an end destination and they're just stuck and feel lost, or they have an end destination but don't know how to get there. Right. And the way I explain it, it's like cooking in a kitchen it's like somebody cooking without a recipe. They've got all these ingredients, they have some idea what they want, but how does it come out? Well, wrong, right? And that's how people end up in jobs or careers or life situations or marriages where they're not really fulfilled and happy because they didn't follow the quote recipe, right? And it's like, here's the best way I put it. Imagine you watch a commercial for a restaurant. Let's say they're advertising, I don't know, a new sandwich. You're watching the commercial and you're like, oh my God, that is like a fucking godsend. The cheese pulling apart as they're pulling the sandwich apart. The
Yep.
bread is perfectly toasted. The tomatoes look like no tomato I've ever seen in real life, what the fuck they're using. But and the lettuce, it's never that crisp. But anyway, so you're watching this commercial, you're turned on. You're like, I need that in my mouth ASAP. And so you go to the restaurant. You're anticipating this thing when you get, driving along the way. You sit down, you order it, you get it. You're like, what the fuck? This doesn't look like this isn't what I had in mind. That's how I explain it. How people end up in their careers, their life, where they're not happy, right? Where it doesn't end up like they thought it would be. Because again, it's like following a recipe. So you have ingredients. So let's say somebody wants to make a career change, but they're not really sure how. Like a client of mine, he's a upper management, big tech companies, multi six figure. Dude's burned out. Great career, right? And he's like, shit, I'm just not sure what I want to do next. So I said, it's like a recipe. You have your ingredients, your skills, your traits, your strengths, your weaknesses, your goals, right? And what we do is we put all these ingredients together, and through a process of questioning and exercises I take people through, we get answers. And that's how we take all of your quote ingredients or answers and create your own quote recipe, right? So you will find the happiness and meaning and fulfillment you're looking for. And so that's just one example. And the thing I tell people is when you are trying to make your next move, whatever it may be, the biggest mistake people make is they think about shiny things, status, title, the hot chick with the big breasts, or the hot dude, depending on whatever, or the house, or the salary. Things like that will just cloud your vision. For example, I have another client who was making a change. And when I asked him, so why did you pick those careers? He said, well, it just seemed logical because of my transferable skills. I said, okay, you do need to consider your transferable skills. I said, but based on your answer, that tells me that's not what you really want. Because he was like, well, if I do this, it would help me keep the same salary. And I said, no, forget that. You need to first determine what you want and pretend money or obligations is no object. That's how you start. Okay. And here's an exercise anybody listening can do. All right. Write down 4 to 5 things you love and you want showing up in your career. The key is make sure they don't have to be related. So, for example, I'm going to make up a random example. Let's say you love space travel, teaching, comedy, and let's pick fitness.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Now those 4 things don't, on the surface seem related. So the first thing you do is just write down 4 or 5 things you love. Don't worry about whether they're related or not. I mean, even if you love venomous snakes and you love Legos, write them down. And once you do that, then you got to see if you can find a job or a career that has those things. If not, try to create one. The guy who taught me this was a hotelier, left the business at 41, and this is the exercise he did. So his things he loved was Texas, ranch life, hunting, and hospitality. So what did he do? He opened like a 20, 30 acre, it's like a little B&B in Texas. So people who like to hunt pay him to stay in his little B&B They can go hunt. I don't know what you hunt in Texas, antelope or whatever the fuck you hunt. Cats, I don't know, squirrels, whatever.
Wild pigs.
Whatever
Whatever
it
you
is
are.
you hunt, that's what they
Yep.
hunt. Okay, so they hunt. He will take their kill, butcher it up into steaks and everything for them, and vacuum pack it and put it in dry ice. They don't have to do all that messy work and shit, right? They just hunt, kill, stay in the B&B and go home. And for anybody listening, if you're like, well, okay, great, Curt, I don't have $500,000 to open up a B&B. Doesn't matter because the principle's the same. So let's go back to the example I gave before, right? NASA, fitness, oh my God, what did I put? NASA, fitness, teaching, and humor. So let's say those are your 4 things. And I'm just going to problem solve this right here on this podcast call, whatever this is called. Okay, well, let's say you're too old to be an astronaut. Okay, well, what else can you do with space travel? You can start a blog, a YouTube channel, a podcast. And on that note, for anybody listening, you realize some of these people who have some of the biggest podcasts started out with 0 knowledge,
Yeah.
but they started a podcast because they wanted to learn more. And so their knowledge grew. And then they became a leading voice in that space. So anyways, those are some things you could do with it. Well, you can tie in fitness to that, right? And what you would need to do to because, you have to be fit for space travel. Humor, if you like humor or comedy, well, you can talk about space travel with some wit or sarcasm or something, right? So it's about first identifying what you want. Then it comes down to being creative, how you bring it in your life. And I'll give you one more example. When I left the chef world and I did this exercise, I wrote down music because I thought, okay, I want to be a professional musician. So I wrote that down. Then the second thing I did was I thought about careers, what I could do. Then I thought about, okay, what am I willing to sacrifice to have this? Because, being a rock star or whatever sounds great. But are you willing to sacrifice and do what's necessary? And I thought about it. I thought, wait a minute. I'm 40. I don't want to live in a van with a bunch of dudes touring the country so I can just play the gig and live off McDonald's. No, fuck that. So I thought, okay, and this is where the creativity comes in. I thought, okay, how else can I bring that into my life? Well, it's a hobby, so I play guitar. That's one. And then I started playing local restaurants, jazz duet with my teacher, my guitar teacher. Wasn't Madison Square Garden or millions of dollars, but it was a way to bring music in my life. So that's an example of how you can find a job that you really love or career, okay? Because if you find something that has the things you love, then you're going to be doing what you love every day.
So, no, that's a very, like they said, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, right? And that's part of one of the concepts behind like my blog and this podcast is like, instead of waiting around to retire, just find something that you never want to retire from. Like Willie Nelson doesn't want to, he's not going to retire because he just loves doing what he does. Harrison Ford, I mean, he's still putting out shows and movies and they love it. Warren Buffett, he might have stopped retiring, but you can bet that he's still waking up and checking the stock markets, even though he might not officially be working anymore. But that's definitely one of the things I preach. And I'm curious, as you're talking and you're giving me a lot of other examples, you gave one of them already with music, but like, how is it that, bridge that gap between chef and what you're doing now? Like, cause you're putting out content, you're coaching, like, what is it? What were the components of like how you ended up getting to that point?
Yeah, well, when I left my chef career, I ran a wine and spirits promotional agency for about 12 years.
Okay.
The owner shut that down. So I started my coaching business officially 3 years ago when I still had the full-time job. I started it as a side hustle. The owner shut down the company. Actually, he didn't even tell me.
Yeah.
And so that was in February of last year of 2024. And I took that as a sign like, fuck it, I'm just going to go all in on the coaching. And that's what I've been doing since. But so how did I arrive to this place? Well, when I left my chef career, there was a period of 5 years of stagnation. right?
Mm.
And because I didn't have the skills and knowledge I have now. And like that example I gave before, where people, you see the food commercial and you go to the restaurant and you're like, this isn't what I had in mind. That was me. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the knowledge. And high achievers, we don't like asking for help because we like to save face. So what happens? You feel more isolated. You feel more lonely, more helpless and hopeless. And so for about almost 5 years, I was just stagnant. Actually, I wasn't stagnant. I regressed. I gained 60 pounds, had a drinking problem, was depressed, going through midlife crisis. I mean, I could have been in a coma for that period of time, and it would have been the same thing. I could have been in prison. It would have been the same thing, except in prison, I probably would have had a boyfriend and not by choice. But,
Yep.
so it would have been the same fucking thing. And then, see, part of the problem was there are many misperceptions about career change and starting over, like, oh, fear of making a mistake, or fear of change, or fear of losing face, or fear of, or this myth that starting over means starting from the bottom. No, that's bullshit. Okay, as long as you know how to do it. Right now, I started over from the bottom. I went from being an award-winning chef to being a server in a pizza place because I didn't have the skills and knowledge I have now, and I learned everything the hard way. That's why I do what I do. So, um, one of the biggest things that kept me stuck, and one of the ways I hurt myself the most was the fear of making a mistake. What if I leave this career and I pick the wrong thing? Well, the fear of making a mistake led me to making a much bigger mistake. It cost me almost 5 years. And if you think about it, I could have left my chef career, followed another career for a year, realized it was the wrong one, changed careers again, did that for a year, realized it was the wrong. I could have done that process like 4 times, and it would have been less time than the 5 years I was fucking around. And that 5 years of stagnation cost me about 250 grand in lost potential earning. So I learned everything the hard way. So I remember thinking about it before I started my coaching business, like, because when you go through something big like that, you ruminate on it a lot. I remember thinking, why the fuck was that so difficult or so expensive, so painful? And I realized, shit, it doesn't need to be, because making, whether you're doing a career change or trying to move up, or make a life change, whatever it is, it's actually fairly simple. It's just like following a recipe, right? But you first need to identify your ingredients, or another way of putting it, the answers, because everybody has the answers inside them, but they can't see them. That's why I coach. Why do the top athletes and CEOs in the world work with coaches? They can't see their blind spots. But that's, that's why I do what I do, because it doesn't need to be this difficult or painful or expensive. And so that's why I teach people in 90 days what took me 12 years to learn.
And and it's really interesting, like you were saying, that I could have been in a coma, I didn't go anywhere for these 5 years, but I kind of, in a way, I want to push back on that a little bit, because it was those 5 years that I would say were pretty valuable, because that's where you've come. That's what got you here now, and that probably gives you like a much deeper understanding of what you're trying to teach people and what you're trying to show people, right? Because you lived in it. Like when you sit there and you know immerse yourself, or what you could say, marinate. There you go. When you sit there and marinate in that for 5 years, you've got one hell of a perspective that no one else will have. And it's like, anytime I've gone through those situations, it's like, it just all is, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you've got good, you've got bad, but at the end of the day, it's all part of the process, right? And you can use it, if you don't have bad weather, you'll never appreciate the sunny days. You know what I mean? So like, it's kind of a situation like that. And one other thing I think is a lesson for people listening to this that I caught that you mentioned earlier, you talked about how that guy just shut their business down like out of the blue, and you're like, hey, didn't tell you anything about that. That's happening all the time to people. I see it all the time on, LinkedIn, or I see people talking about it on YouTube, talking about it on Reddit. And one thing that saved you is the fact that you had already started playing around with all these different side hustles, right? So it wasn't like you said, you weren't starting from scratch. And that's why a lot of times I'm telling people that are out there in their, they have a career, they have whatever it is they're working on, play on the side, do something, just start learning something, follow something, because you never know. That's what happened with me. I just happened to be around when the internet was just taking off, like in the early days, and social and Google ads and all this stuff. And I just started playing. And that's ultimately what saved me when I got let go in 2013, because I was like, well, you know what? I'm not going to send out any resumes. I'm just going to see how this thing goes. And everybody thought I was crazy. Like, oh, you're not going to put on any resumes. You're just going to put ads on the internet. What do you mean? you know, but it's like, it's because I learned stuff. I learned podcasting. I learned blogging. I learned how to run ads. So I had these valuable skills that I was able to transfer into something else. Right. So I wasn't just sitting there, having to start from ground zero. And that sounds like, basically like the same thing that you did. So it wasn't like a kill shot, for lack of a better word. Like you were just screwed because you had some stuff to fall back on.
Well, but it wasn't just that, but I also did some part-time work for a while. So, and this brings me to another point to people. People always come to me when they're screwed, right? Out of a job or been laid off or want to make a change and they're unhappy and they've been unhappy for a while. And then I ask, well, have you been networking? Well, I reach out to people I know.
Mm, good one.
Yeah, nice for you. Have you spent any time building your brand, establishing your authority? What do you mean? Well, building a brand, creating content. No. So when the owner shut that company, I reached out to my network on LinkedIn. I said, hey guys, I'm just looking for some, part-time work, about 20 hours a week. These are my skills. This is what I can do. I found work within 3 days. Why? Because I had already invested time in building relationships and establishing my authority and my brand. And, so many people don't do that. And that's
Yeah.
why I teach people you've got to you don't have to be a TikTok influencer. You don't have to spend 40 hours a week on social media like I do. But you need to start establishing a brand, because that is how you stand out above the competition, especially in this job market.
You may never need a resume because you're putting your work online to some degree, right? Like now it's almost like you're building a resume live on social in a lot of ways. That would be one way to look at it. And I would say, like, for me, that's a big mistake. Even though I've been self-employed since 2013, there was a huge chunk of that up until like a couple of years ago where I wasn't putting anything out there. I just had my clients and I was just kind of hanging out and doing my thing. And sure, I had my Google Ads circles that I'd hang out in, but it's like I wasn't putting my stuff, my anything out there. I wasn't doing podcasts. I just got away from doing all that. And I woke up one day and I was like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I not doing that? I just made it so much harder for myself by not just participating and putting stuff out there. Like, here's what I'm working on. Here are the people I'm talking to. Like, I'm talking to you right now. Like, it's like I met you, and it's just really interesting. And it's something that people have to really consider. And again, it doesn't have to be work. It doesn't have to be go back to school for 8 years and get a doctorate to do what you want to do. I mean, you just got to start doing something and just kind of doing it in public to some degree and talking to other people.
And for anybody out there listening who's like, because I hear this shit all the time. Well, I don't want to brag and I don't want to seem like I'm looking for attention. It's like, no, a client of mine said that. I said, how did you find me? Your content. There you go.
Yep.
Right. You have, first of all, nobody's going to promote you like you would. So you got to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to do video if you don't like doing video, if you're uncomfortable, but somebody out there deserves to hear your point of view. And also, here's the other thing. If you have knowledge that can help somebody else, I look at it like it's your obligation to share, right? That's why I do what I do, because I can't tell you how many times somebody said, wow, that post you did really, really resonated, or, things like that. So if for anybody afraid of posting content, just share what you know. Share your unique perspective. If you took a course, share what you learned. If you're making a career change, then that's where you could, like, if you're a chef and you want to go into marketing, then I would do a post like 3 reasons why chefs make the best marketers or something like that, right? Because here's the other thing. When it comes to building your brand and establishing your authority, one, again, if you don't promote yourself, nobody will. Two, the biggest mistake I see people make is they rely on their qualifications. The job market is not the same as it was pre-COVID.
No.
Qualifications are no longer enough. You need to show how you're different, and you need to show how you provide value to a future, whatever company you want to work for, or if you have a business, how you provide value to potential clients, right? You have to do that. And if you want to move up, so let's say you're director and the next level for you is VP, you are going to have to start thinking 2 years out and start establishing yourself online as a VP. Because when a decision maker or recruiter is looking for a VP and they come across your profile or your website or whatever, well, it's certainly going to work in your favor if they see, oh, this person already looks like a VP. And it's the same thing if you're doing a career change. Because remember, if you want to make a career change, the hiring manager or recruiter won't connect the dots. So if, for example, going from chef to marketing is a logical progression and the transferable skills a chef has lend themselves to marketing, that person, the recruiter, won't connect the dots. You have to do that for them.
I almost feel like, this is exactly how it kind of happened for me, and I'll talk about that in about a second here. But the one thing I want to talk about too is that I think it's kind of a cultural thing, maybe for Gen Xers, or in our generation. I could be wrong about this. I'm sure there's people outside of this. There's outliers and everything, but like, I think we have this stigma against self promotion. I think it's been kind of happening since I was a little kid. Because you always, it sounds kind of crazy that we would think that way, but I feel like that is a way. And this topic seems to come up every time I'm talking to people on this podcast, or just with people that reply to my blog posts and all that stuff. They're like, man, I don't want to brag. I don't want to do this and do that. And it's like, they just kind of got to reframe it just a little bit. Don't think about it like you're bragging. Think about it that like you're just explaining to people, or you're just sharing, what I mean? Cause that's really all it is. I have this thing where I call it, at the end of the day, we're all storytellers and tool builders. I mean, when you go back to the caveman days, I did a blog post on this a couple of years ago, and people still comment on it. But it's like, you experience something and then you tell other people about it. If you're a caveman, you're like, hey, I finally found how to kill a freaking deer, and it's like, I saw him, this is how I did it. And, oh, don't go this way because, you might get eaten by a tiger that wants that deer too. And it's like, oh, by the way, here's a tool I built to kill the deer easily. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's kind of like, it's very simple. Storytellers and tool builders. That's all we have to think about it, not bragging or anything like that. And like, to your point about how I started my career, like when I was working at Winona Lighting is the name of the company, and I was a draftsman, and I was building stuff on the side. I had a music podcast slash blog that I had going, and then I also had a fantasy football blog. And the skills that I learned, like, building websites, I started learning ads when I was doing all this stuff. And somebody, one of the kids of one of the owners, saw that I was doing that, and he was asking me about it one day. He's like, oh, I saw you have a fantasy football blog. And I'm like, yep, sure did. And at first I was like all sketchy, like, oh, why is he asking me this? But he's like, you might be good on our marketing team. Like, do you know about like websites and all that stuff? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, you should come into the marketing department, and, would you do that? And I'm like, yeah, I would, so I moved into a completely different area of the company on that, which and ultimately became my career, what I'm doing now. But that's an example. I just started playing on the side. I built stuff on the side, and I just put it out there. I wasn't bragging that I was a fantasy football guy. I wasn't bragging that I was a music blogger or running ads. it just kind of, people saw it, he noted it, and then the next thing you know, I'm like in a completely different career. But it's like if I would have just went into his office and said, "Hey, I think I should be in the marketing department," he would have probably like been like, okay, well, why? And then I wouldn't have anything to back it up. But he saw with his own eyes like what I was actually doing online, and that led to that opportunity. So just, and I know there's a million other stories out there just like that. So just another way to look at it. So I guess, what is the first thing that you would do right now? Like, or what would you tell somebody listening to this? What's the first thing they should do, like right after they get done listening to this?
Well, what is it that they want to do? Like, can you give me some context?
Well, I'm just, you gave, a lot of the reasons why people come to you. I mean, they're obviously in a place right now where they're sitting at work like, this just is not it.
Oh,
And I
wait,
was
yeah, I
telling,
forgot the name of the podcast. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
no,
So,
no, yeah, you're good. And it's like, I always tell people, if there's any part of you that's sitting there wishing that you weren't there, or you think something's wrong, that's the first sign that something is wrong. So you should start pulling at that thread, right? So like if they want to continue pulling at that thread, what would you tell them is
yeah,
the next part of the thread to pull, for lack of a better way to put that?
when people are at that inflection point in their life or career, here's what's happening. First off, whenever we're faced with a big change in life, limiting beliefs show up in the form of excuses, but you don't see them as excuses. The reason they exist is to maintain the status quo, right? And to keep you stuck. The payoff is comfort, because it's a lot easier to not make a big change than to make a change. And then the fear or the pain of the unknown is often greater than the fear or pain of remaining where you are. Because that's why people stay in abusive relationships or toxic jobs, because they're already familiar with it. There's comfort in familiarity. Now, when you're at that inflection point, the other thing to consider is when your career is your identity, right? High achievers, what's central to all of us? Pride and ego. Okay. And when your identity is attached to, or when your career is your identity, it's hard to let that go. And so the mistake I made is I clung to it, right? Those limiting beliefs, because I didn't want to let it go. That was my identity. And the problem with that is when you reach that inflection point, you have two versions of yourself fighting in your head like a couple of drunk uncles outside of Taco Bell, right?
Yep.
And one is saying, everything's fine, stay here. The other's saying, no, let's go. Get the fuck out of here. Once I finally let go of that version of myself that was no longer serving me, I felt a relief, like a weight was lifted off my chest. And then I was like, shit, why didn't I do this before? Because when the reason you feel that strife is when you need to make a change in your life, right? And if you don't act on it, you're going to feel more strife, as I did. And then now, in my case, I went for the low hanging fruit, excessive alcohol, junk food, stuff like that, which a lot of people do. And so the sooner you let go of what is no longer serving you, the faster you can just move on. And you're going to be happier. You're going to be more motivated, because it's almost like you've been freed. Okay. So that's one thing. Also consider the thinking and the behaviors and the mindset that got you to where you are is not going to get you out. Right? Let's take alcohol abuse, because I went through that joyous fucking occasion. The thinking and mindset and behaviors that led me to having a drinking problem were not going to help me get over it. That's one of the most important reasons about hiring a coach, because you can't see your blind spots, and you'll be able to unlearn the mindsets that are no longer serving you. Okay? I'll give you another example related to that. Systems thinking. When people, and this is related to the mindset, when people are trying to fix a problem, they often use linear thinking. For example, my boss sucks. I'm going to look for a new job. Okay, you got a new job, but you ended up with another shitty boss. Why? Because you're using linear thinking. Systems thinking means zooming out and looking at all the moving pieces. So, for example, if you take the person who keeps ending up with the same shitty boyfriend or girlfriend over and over again and keeps dumping them and finding another one and dumping them, and that's linear thinking. Ah, my boyfriend sucks. Let me find another one. But systems thinking means looking at the big picture. Okay, what behaviors, what patterns, what mindset, what habits are underlying that are leading you to you making that shit decision, right? And ending up in the same space. So I wanted to give a little bit of background before answering your question when you said, what should people do next? Because you need to understand what's happening underneath before you can address it. So if you're at a place where it's time to make a change, regardless of if it's something career, life, whatever, it's actually fairly simple. But our limiting beliefs and our ego and our pride gets in the way. But it's just like following a recipe. The first thing you do is you need to get clarity. Clarity is your GPS. How do you get clarity? You got to gather the ingredients, so to speak. Those ingredients are your goals, your strengths, your weaknesses. What do you want, right? Those things that make you, right? Your values, right? We got to take those things and we got to create a roadmap based on your goals and where you're at in life. Okay. So this way, it'll help you make better decisions. It'll help you avoid shiny object syndrome. And once you have clarity, you'll be more confident. Once you have clarity, a lot of those fears will shrink. And with clarity, you'll make decisions that are in more alignment with your values. And by default, you should end up with meaning and purpose. So that's step one. You got to get clarity. All right. Step two is we got to, what I call, clean out the pantry. Look at any of those limiting beliefs or such as imposter syndrome or fears that are holding us back. Because what do I see happening in so many experienced, qualified professionals with 15, 20, 30 years of experience? Maybe they're getting ghosted in this job market, or maybe they just haven't had to look for a job in years. So they don't know how to do it. They're getting ghosted and ignored. And for the first time in their life, they can't find work. So their confidence takes a hit. Or maybe like another client of mine in her 50s, she's the CEO of a company, but her boss undermines her. And he's been undermining her for a long time. And her confidence is taking a beating. You got to address those things, because when you lack confidence, or if you have some underlying thing, it's going to show up in your messaging, how you show up, your content, your networking, everywhere. All right. Because you need to project yourself as a leader, not a job seeker. Obviously, this just applies to career. So that's the first two steps. One, we got to get clarity. Two, we got to clean out the pantry. Three, now we cook. It's about executing. So we did all the prep work. Now we put all those ingredients together. We put it in action, right? And that's how you go from, I'm not sure what I want, to knowing exactly what you want, having the peace of mind of knowing you're on the right path, right? And finding the meaning and purpose and fulfillment you're looking for. There's much more in depth than that, but that's a basic overview.
The first component kind of reminds me, are you familiar with a key guy? Have you heard about?
Yeah.
You've heard of that? Yeah, that sounds very similar. Like, if anybody's out there, it seems like that would be a good tool for people to kind of start that first step, just kind of sorting things out, like you had mentioned. I'll put some links to that stuff in the show notes or whatever for people if they want that. But that was one thing that I kind of have done over the years to kind of get, just put things in perspective. So yeah, so if somebody, and I probably should wrap this up, we're getting close to an hour, but if somebody wants to work with you and check out your content, tell us where we need to go and what we need to do.
You can find me, I'm on Substack. Okay. And my name is spelled Curt, C-U-R-T. Last name is Sassak, S-A-S-S-A-K. I'm on Substack. I just started a YouTube channel. There's a lot of video shorts, but I'll be doing long form content. I'm also on TikTok. My TikTok ID, although I'll probably change it, but I won't change it for a while, is at Curt.S70.
Okay.
C-U-R-T.S 70 is my TikTok handle.
I'll
So
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so that's where I am also on LinkedIn, but I got locked out of my account because they suspected some kind of suspicious activity. So I'm working on getting back in there. So I just have to verify my identity. So, anyways, I've been on LinkedIn for some time as well. And then I have a website, kurtsassak.net. CurtSassak.net.
Okay. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes so you guys can go check that out. And then also on YouTube, I'll probably tag you. So this tag will be right underneath that. So then it'll be easy for people. In the meantime, I'm Corey. You guys probably already know that. My website is redefiningretirement.io. That's kind of like my ground zero. You can find me there, talking about a lot of the same topics we're talking about here. Just how to build some of these skills and build a life that we don't necessarily want to retire from. It becomes an option rather than like an end game or whatever. But yeah, and if you like this stuff, stick around. I'm gonna keep finding more people like Curt to bring them on and have them tell you like that it's possible to reinvent yourself, to build something new, and to keep going. And so just subscribe to the channel. And if you're on Spotify or Apple, if you could, it just got started over there, go and if you like this stuff, just, throw a rating on there because it kind of helps out, to find more people to listen and just kind of spreads the word a little bit. But other than that, that's all we have for you today. I'm going to be back next week with another really cool person that I can't wait to share with you. But that should do it for today. Thanks for listening. Again, I can't say this enough at the end of my videos and at the end of my podcast, but there's so much stuff out there that any second that you spend listening to anything that I create, I am like super grateful because, yeah, I mean, it means a lot to me because I know there's a lot of stuff out there and we don't have a whole lot of time. So I know that your time is valuable. So thank you for listening and watching. Have a good rest of the day. Good luck out there. See you next time.